Bluestreak looked like just another Martin Lawrence comedy, but behind the cameras, things got messy fast. There were cast members who flat out refused to follow the script, a real Los Angeles landmark hiding in plain sight, and a sequel that vanished into thin air only to resurface decades later. By the end of this video, you'll know 15 things about this 1999 heist comedy that completely change how you see it, plus one bonus story at the end that almost nobody talks about, and it's honestly terrifying. So speed up with me, because the list starts now. 1. Dave Chappelle refused a scene and won. There was a scene written for this movie that never made it to the final cut, and the reason why says a lot about Dave Chappelle. He plays Tully, the chain-smoking, perpetually nervous getaway driver who can't sit still for more than 10 seconds. The script originally had Tully going undercover in disguise, and that disguise meant putting him in a dress for laughs. Chappelle said no immediately, and he didn't budge even when producers explained how much money the production was losing every minute he refused. They brought in more executives, they brought in the director, and they tried every angle to convince him. His answer stayed the same. He told them he didn't need a dress to be funny, and he wasn't going to be another black actor in Hollywood put in women's clothing for a cheap laugh. Years later on Oprah, Chappelle explained that he saw this as part of a pattern across the industry, one he refused to be part of. The scene got cut entirely, and Tully kept his dignity. It's a tiny footnote in a goofy comedy, but it shows Chappelle was already thinking about his image and his principles years before he became one of the most respected voices in comedy. 2. The police station wasn't a police station. The entire plot of Bluestreak hinges on one building. Miles Logan stashes a stolen diamond in an air duct at a construction site, gets locked up for 2 years, and comes back to find his hiding spot is now inside the LAPD's headquarters. You see this building constantly throughout the film. The steps, the entrance, the hallways where Miles struts around pretending to be Detective Malone. But here's the thing, that building is not a police station at all. It's the Los Angeles Central Public Library, one of the oldest institutions in the city, dating back to 1872. The production crew built a massive fake police station facade and physically attached it to the front of this historic library. The construction alone took 5 weeks, and then another week and a half just to bolt it onto the real building. So for a few months in 1999, one of LA's most important cultural landmarks had a fake LAPD entrance stuck to its face, all so Martin Lawrence could strut through it pretending to be a cop. Next time you watch the film, remember you're actually looking at a library wearing a costume. 3. Martin Lawrence got paid like a superstar. By 1999, Martin Lawrence wasn't just popular, he was one of the most bankable names in Hollywood. His sitcom had run for 5 seasons. Bad Boys had pulled in over $140 million worldwide, and studios knew his name alone could sell tickets. For Bluestreak, his salary reflected that status, a staggering $20 million. That number put him in an extremely small group of actors who could command that kind of paycheck per film, alongside names like Jim Carrey, Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, and Chris Tucker. To put it in perspective, Lawrence made $6 million for the first Bad Boys, which was already considered a massive deal at the time. For Life, released the same year as Bluestreak, he earned $8.5 million. Then Bluestreak came along and doubled that, with the film's total budget sitting somewhere between $36 and $65 million. Lawrence's paycheck alone accounted for nearly a third of the entire production cost. That's the kind of leverage a comedian gets when every movie he touches turns into box office gold. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. 4. Columbia forced the film to become PG-13. Bluestreak almost looked completely different. The original concept leaned hard into the kind of raw, unfiltered comedy Martin Lawrence had built his career on. His stand-up was edgy, his sitcom pushed boundaries, and an R-rated version of this film would have matched that energy perfectly. But Columbia Pictures had a different vision. The studio wanted the widest possible audience, families, teenagers, anyone who could buy a ticket, and that meant the rating had to come down to PG-13. That single decision rippled through everything. The dialogue got softened, certain plot elements were rewritten, and characters were adjusted to fit the new tone. Some fans still wonder what that original, harder-edged version would have looked like, how much further the jokes might have gone, how much rougher the language would have been. We'll never actually see that cut, Columbia wanted a PG-13 movie that families could watch together, and that's exactly what they got, even if it meant trimming some of the comedic edge that made Martin Lawrence famous in the first place. 5. An Oscar winner is hiding in this movie. Long before The Help, before Hidden Figures, before Ma, and long before she ever stepped onto an Oscar stage, Octavia Spencer was just another working actress trying to build a resume in Hollywood. One of her early credits, listed as Octavia L. Spencer, is a small role in Bluestreak, where she plays a character named Shauna. It's a brief appearance, the kind of role that's easy to miss if you're not paying attention, but it's there in the credits. This kind of thing happens way more often than people realize. Late 90s comedies are full of future stars in tiny background roles, names that mean nothing at the time but become fascinating footnotes once you know what they went on to achieve. Spencer would go on to win an Academy Award in 2012, but back in 1999, she was simply Shauna, a name buried in the cast list of a Martin Lawrence comedy that nobody thought twice about. 6. The $22 line is a secret connection. Early in the film, Miles Logan walks out of prison, and an officer hands him back his personal belongings, including a wallet containing exactly $22. That number seems oddly specific, and it is, because it's not random at all. That same year, Martin Lawrence starred alongside Eddie Murphy in Life, playing a man named Claude Banks, who gets wrongfully sentenced to life in prison. At the start of that film, Claude's wallet is taken from him, and inside it, exactly $22. Same actor, same year, same exact amount of money in two different prison movies. The Bluestreak writers slipped this detail in as a quiet wink for anyone paying close attention, a connection between two of Martin Lawrence's prison-themed roles released just months apart. Most audiences never noticed it. The line flies by in seconds, and you're not exactly thinking about a different movie while watching this one. But once you know it's there, it's impossible to unsee. Two broke characters, two prison sentences, both played by the same man in the same year. 7. A sequel was written, then became a different movie. Bluestreak made serious money, so a sequel should have been a no-brainer, and for a while, it looked like one. In the early 2000s, reports surfaced that Bluestreak 2 was actively in development, with Martin Lawrence and Luke Wilson set to reunite in a buddy cop format similar to 48 Hours. Lawrence had even signed a two-picture deal with Columbia worth $20 million per film, with one of those slots reportedly reserved for the sequel. A screenwriter delivered a script in early 2001, with a plot involving Luke Wilson's character tracking Miles Logan down in Mexico amid a bomb threat. Then, nothing. The project quietly stalled, and years went by with fans assuming it was simply taking forever. But here's where it gets interesting. Reports suggest that script was eventually reworked and repurposed into an entirely different film, Bad Company, the 2002 action comedy starring Chris Rock and Anthony Hopkins. Different actors, different premise on the surface, but possibly built from the bones of what was once meant to be Bluestreak 2. 8. William Forsythe played against type for once. William Forsythe has one of those faces built for villains. Intense, intimidating, the kind of guy who looks like trouble before he even speaks a word. Hollywood clearly noticed, casting him as the bad guy again and again in films like Raising Arizona, Dick Tracy, The Rock, and Stone Cold. If a movie needed a menacing presence, Forsythe usually got the call. Bluestreak broke that pattern entirely. Here he plays Detective Hardcastle, a fellow cop who works alongside Martin Lawrence's character, treats him with respect, and has zero hidden agenda. He's just a solid detective doing his job. Critics actually picked up on this shift at the time, with reviewers noting how refreshing it was to see Forsythe in a role that didn't require him to be the villain for once. After years of being the guy audiences love to hate, he finally got to play someone you're rooting for. It's a small detail in the grand scheme of the movie, but it added a layer of credibility to the police station scenes, and for once, Forsythe wasn't the man Martin Lawrence had to fight in the final act. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. 9. India made 4 unauthorized remakes. Bluestreak's success didn't stop in the United States, and it didn't stop with one remake either. The premise: a thief hiding something valuable, going to prison, and coming back to find his hiding spot crawling with cops, turned out to be incredibly portable, and Indian filmmakers took notice repeatedly. In 2002, Bollywood released a Hindi-language version following the exact same structure. None of this was authorized by Columbia Pictures. Nobody asked permission. The film simply got made. Then it happened again in 2008 with a Telugu language version, again in 2011 with a Tamil language version, and once more in 2012 with a Kannada language version. That's 4 separate, unauthorized remakes across 4 different Indian languages, all built on the same basic concept as this one, Martin Lawrence comedy. This kind of borrowing is actually fairly common in international cinema, where successful Hollywood concepts get reused, sometimes with permission and often without. But 4 remakes is still an unusually high number, and it speaks to just how universal this premise really is. A thief pretending to be a cop apparently works in English, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and Kannada equally well. 10. The soundtrack went platinum with major hip-hop names. Bluestreak wasn't just a movie, it was wrapped in a soundtrack that turned into its own cultural moment. Columbia loaded the album with some of the biggest names in hip-hop and R&B at the time, including Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, Tyrese, and Heavy D, all contributing tracks to what was, on the surface, a Martin Lawrence comedy about a guy pretending to be a cop. The album performed well commercially too, peaking at number 31 on the Billboard 200 and reaching number 9 on the Billboard Top R&B and Hip Hop Albums chart, eventually earning platinum certification. But it wasn't just the songs doing the heavy lifting. Composer Edward Shearmur created the film's actual score, the music underneath the chases, the jokes, and the quieter moments. And reviewers described it as having a jovial caper vibe, light enough to match the comedy, but energized enough to drive the action sequences. Music can make or break comedy, the wrong score kills jokes, and the wrong soundtrack can date a film instantly. Bluestreak managed to nail both, and the platinum certification proves audiences were paying attention to more than just the jokes. 11. The Training Day house shows up here. First, early in Bluestreak, Miles Logan gets out of prison and heads straight to visit his ex-girlfriend Janice, played by Tamala Jones, at her house. It's a fairly ordinary scene in a nice neighborhood, nothing that screams memorable at first glance. But that exact same house shows up again 2 years later in a very different kind of film. In 2001, Denzel Washington starred in Training Day, delivering an Oscar-winning performance as the corrupt detective Alonzo Harris, one of the most acclaimed films of the entire decade. The same house at the same address appears in that movie too. Hollywood reuses locations constantly, that's nothing new. Sound stages and streets get recycled all the time. But there's something almost funny about this particular overlap. A house that once hosted Martin Lawrence casually picking up his belongings became just 2 years later the setting for one of the most intense and acclaimed dramas of the 2000s. Same walls, same windows, completely different energy depending on which film you're watching. 12. The entire plot was borrowed from a 1965 British comedy. Bluestreak feels like a wonderfully original premise. A thief hides a diamond, goes to prison, and comes back to find his hiding spot turned into a police station. But Martin Lawrence and his team didn't actually invent this idea. The core plot traces back to a 1965 British comedy called The Big Job, which follows the exact same basic structure with a different setup. In that earlier film, a group of thieves hide a stolen case of money inside a hollowed-out tree before getting caught and sent to prison. When they're released, they return for the cash, only to discover the tree is now standing in the middle of a police station plaza. Sound familiar? Swap the tree for an air duct and the cash for a diamond, and you've essentially got Bluestreak. The bones of the story are nearly identical. A valuable item hidden, a prison sentence served, and a return to find the hiding spot now crawling with cops. Hollywood has always loved recycling solid concepts, and if an idea worked in 1965, there's a good chance someone will dust it off decades later and make it funnier for a new audience, which is exactly what happened here. 13. Filming spread across Southern California. For 3 months, Bluestreak feels like Los Angeles through and through. The streets, the culture, the LAPD presence woven into every scene. And that's because it really was filmed almost entirely in Southern California. Principal photography ran from January through April of 1999. 3 months spent shooting across multiple locations throughout the region. The primary base was Sony Pictures Studios in Culver City. where most of the interior police station scenes were shot in a controlled environment with full production facilities. But the crew didn't stay confined to the studio lot. Production spread out to Santa Clarita, downtown Los Angeles, Fontana, Venice, and various other neighborhoods across Southern California, each providing different backdrops for different scenes. Even the climactic chase sequences near the Mexico border were filmed in actual border regions, using real locations to stand in for the film's final stretch. Director Les Mayfield clearly prioritized authenticity, real streets, real buildings, real Los Angeles atmosphere, and that grounding in genuine locations is part of what makes the city feel like a character in its own right throughout the movie. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. 14. It beat Fight Club at the box office. When Bluestreak hit theaters on September 17, 1999, across more than 2,700 screens, it debuted at number 1, pulling in just over $19 million in its first 3 days alone. That's a strong opening for a comedy that critics largely brushed off. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a rating around 35%. With reviewers calling it formulaic and generic. Audiences clearly felt differently. The film earned an A grade from Cinema Score. People loved it enough to come back for repeat viewings, and it had real staying power in theaters. By the end of its run, Bluestreak had grossed nearly $118 million worldwide, against a budget somewhere between $36 and $65 million, a clear financial win by any measure. But here's the wild part. That total actually outgrossed Fight Club, the David Fincher film starring Brad Pitt and Edward Norton that's now considered one of the defining movies of its decade. Fight Club made around $100 million worldwide, while Bluestreak pulled in $118 million. It also out-earned films like She's All That, Cruel Intentions, and 10 Things I Hate About You, several of the most memorable teen movies of 1999. That's the kind of pull a $20 million comedy star brings to the table, almost at the end. And the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. 15. A sequel was finally announced 25 years later. For decades, Bluestreak 2 existed only as a rumor, something fans brought up occasionally, but never expected to actually see. It had been written, reworked, and apparently absorbed into a different movie entirely, and after that, the trail went cold for years. Then, on October 25, 2024, Sony Pictures officially confirmed that Bluestreak 2 was finally moving forward, a full quarter century after the original hit theaters. Martin Lawrence is attached to reprise his role as Miles Logan, with his own production company involved alongside Sony. A screenwriter known for work on shows like Chicago PD and Quantico has taken on the script, tasked with bringing this character back to the big screen after all this time. The timing actually makes a lot of sense. Lawrence had just come off Bad Boys, Ride or Die, which grossed $44 million and pushed the franchise's total earnings past $1 billion, proving he could still draw audiences decades into his career. There's no confirmation yet on whether Luke Wilson or Dave Chappelle will return alongside him, and details remain limited at this stage. But after 25 years of waiting, Miles Logan is officially coming back, and that's a comeback almost nobody saw coming. Bonus: Martin Lawrence nearly died. Months after filming, this last one isn't funny at all. It's genuinely terrifying. By August of 1999, filming on Bluestreak had wrapped, and the movie was deep into post-production. Martin Lawrence was already preparing for his next role in Big Mama's House, where he'd play an FBI agent disguised as an elderly woman, and he wanted to lose weight quickly for the part. So he went jogging through Los Angeles in temperatures over 100 degrees, wearing heavy layers of clothing, and, underneath it all, a plastic suit specifically designed to make him sweat more and shed water weight faster. His body simply couldn't handle it. Lawrence collapsed during that run, and his body temperature spiked to 107 degrees, well into life-threatening territory. He fell into a coma that lasted 3 days, breathing with the help of a ventilator while doctors weren't sure he'd survive. One of the biggest comedy stars on the planet was lying unconscious in a hospital bed just months after wrapping a hit movie. He pulled through, recovered, and went on to film Big Mama's House and continue his career for decades afterward. But it's sobering to think how close everything came to ending right there. 1999 could have been remembered as the year we lost Martin Lawrence, and instead, 25 years later, he's still making movies and still bringing Miles Logan back to the screen. And those were 16 strange facts about Bluestreak. It's easy to write this movie off as a forgettable late 90s comedy, but between a real LA library hiding in plain sight, an Oscar winner buried in the credits, and a star who nearly didn't make it to the next year, there's a lot more going on under the surface than most people ever realize. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie that deserves a list of strange facts. See you in the next video.